in the state of Maryland, by statute, you had to be a white person to practice law. When the suits were brought that enabled blacks to practice, African Americans had already been practicing in several states. Actually, Maryland was in the minority of states that had a statute that required you to be white to practice law. That was first challenged in 1877 in a lawsuit that lost, and it continued until 1885, when finally that was declared unconstitutional. When they won the lawsuit, the plaintiffs, led by Reverend Harvey Johnson of Union Baptist Church, didn't have a lawyer to take advantage of the suit, so they went to Washington and they found Everett Waring, convinced him to come to Baltimore, and he in 1885 became the Maryland's first black lawyer to be admitted. And interestingly enough, he also later became the first African American to argue any case before the United States Supreme Court. This is a group of about 10 black lawyers making a courtesy call on Reverend Harvey Johnson, who had brought the lawsuit that made it possible for blacks to practice law. These are distinguished lawyers. At this point, Cummings is a member of the City Council. Warner T. McQuinn was also a member of the City Council. And the great civil rights lawyer was William Ashby Hawkins. Thurgood Marshall said that this was his role model. George W.F. McMecken was the first graduate of Morgan State after it became a full four-year college. Had a distinguished career here in Maryland, and he and W. Ashby Hawkins were partners. Maryland has been a place where you've had a strong presence of African American lawyers, particularly in challenging discriminatory practices. The first step on the road to Brown versus Board of Education is considered to have been the 1935 case that desegregated this institution, the University of Maryland School of Law, brought by Charles Hamilton Houston and by Maryland lawyer young Maryland lawyer Thurgood Marshall. Thurgood Marshall's dean at his law school and mentor was Charles Hamilton Houston. Houston, in addition to being a professor, was also an active lawyer and was involved with several lawsuits here in Baltimore.
Right now I'm writing a biography on a lawyer by the name of Charles Hamilton Houston, who was Thurgood Marshall's mentor and professor at Howard University. Charles Hamilton Houston was Marshall's teacher at Howard. He was also Houston's star student and followed him into civil rights work. Followed him to the NAACP in New York, where they both began the assault in the courts on Jim Crow. Thurgood Marshall and Charles Houston actually used Baltimore as their laboratory for much of the litigation that spread across the country to end legal segregation in the country. Donald Gaines Murray was an Amherst graduate who was very well qualified for law school and who wanted to practice here in Maryland. And when he made himself available to be a plaintiff in the suit, Thurgood Marshall and Charles Houston were very excited. These African-American lawyers were asking for accountability and fairness in the court, which is something that was very unusual at that period of time during the 30s, where African Americans really did not have the benefit of the law on their side. So it was an exciting time to be involved in really what was the first major law reform effort by using the courts. I think it impacted us because now when we talk about test case, we have to have a courageous plaintiff. We have to have somebody who's situated that wants to be an example for other cases going forward. And it actually sets the tone for how all reform litigation is done, no matter what groups are trying to do it, because Marshall and Houston set the pattern for how you change things in a court of law.
But in terms of women, the first black female lawyer was Juanita Mitchell in 1950. 2 years later, this woman here, became a delegate, Lena K. Lee, 1952 was admitted. And it's another 10 years before, after her, the next woman who was admitted, which was 1962, a woman named Helen Baker. That's just her in 1962. And then another 10 years before the next African-American woman in 1972.
You know, Harry was the last barrier that we were able to cross. In '74, David T. Mason had been appointed to the Court of Special Appeals. So that left only one court level that we had never been on. And Harry Cole bridged that gap for us. It was like having Thurgood Marshall on the Supreme Court, quite frankly, because he had arrived. We knew that we had someone who looked like us on the High Court. And lawyers and judges, for that matter, could feel proud of the accomplishments, not only of Harry Cole, but of the African-American race and legal profession as of that time. I would say that what he did as a judge on the court is what really solidified and indicated that the need to continue was there. It was not the appointment itself. It was what he did as a judge of that court that prompted future governors, I think, to recognize, as they had in the case of the lower courts, that black judges, African-American judges, were able to handle the work and would do a great job.
I appeared before an African-American woman in 1983, and her name was Mabel Hubbard, and she was phenomenal. She was graceful. She was knowledgeable. She was straightforward, spoke very cleanly and plainly to every person that came before her. She was a magnificent representation of an excellent judge, fair and full of integrity and honesty. And she was African American and a female, just like me. I was in awe. Whenever I tried anything in front of her, I wanted to be perfect that day. I wanted to be on time. I wanted to be professional and prepared. And I honor her legacy in that, as a lawyer, I tried to be as good as I saw, as she represented to me. But then in 1999, I joined this bench, and the Honorable Mabel Hubbard was on the bench at that time, along with 3 other African-American women, and I made number 5. And the 5 of us served this court and the citizens of Baltimore City, and we were the largest contingent of African-American women judges in the state. Judge Hubbard being the very first to be appointed in the history of the state of Maryland, but I had the honor of serving with her.
It was a fulfillment of a goal that I set for myself. Actually, I hadn't set the goal so much as Harry Cole set the goal for me. And it was a fulfillment of that goal. But it also was a recognition that African Americans were full-fledged players in the judicial system and could handle the job. And I felt very empowered, quite frankly, to have been entrusted with that position, and felt it incumbent upon me to do the very best I could to make sure that it was perceived to be well-deserved.
I was honored to be appointed to the Court of Appeals. It's a privilege to serve. I feel that I stand on the shoulders of great women, such as Juanita Jackson Mitchell and Judge Mabel House Hubbard. I would like to believe that my appointment has been and will be meaningful in opening the doors for other African American women.
So Monumental City Bar Association is the oldest minority bar association in the state of Maryland, founded in 1935 with very famous, celebrated lawyers like W. Ashby Hawkins and Thurgood Marshall. The purpose being to diversify the profession, to make sure that black lawyers are well represented and have advocates, when there may not be others for them.
I was attracted to the Alliance of Black Women Attorneys because of the camaraderie that I found there. As I indicated to you, I started practicing, I would say, 1988, 1989. And even during that time, there were very few African American black women who I knew that were practicing. I did not come from a family of lawyers. I come from a family of educators. And so I was sort of out there swimming with the sharks all by myself. And it was good to find a group of women who not only looked like me, but were also trying to navigate this legal life as I was trying to navigate it. So it attracted me because I was able to reach out and grab somebody's hand and say, I need your help. And then I was also able with the other hand to hold on to somebody else to say, come on, this is what I've learned. And we just began to help each other.
I think that there's a very proud tradition here of effective African American lawyers making change in all aspects of our society, and that Maryland can be proud of its place in history for the things that it has done to improve justice.
We have many historic figures that have assisted in the development and building the bridges that allowed me to cross to become an attorney and then a judge.
So yes, if I had to pick one profession where it's really important for a community to have representation, it would be in the law.
I guess the only thing I want to make sure of is that we provided the avenue and the vehicle by which people could obtain that which we promised, equal and fair justice for all.